We are here in your studio and I see mostly sculptures rather than paintings. How come?
Well, it goes back to a big show that I had in 2001, 2002 at the Museum of Neuchâtel. I showed about 120 paintings, mostly large-scale paintings. Had 8 huge museum rooms. A lot of people saw it. It stayed on for 2 months, so I saw it quite a lot of times. I had to tour people, give guided tours. And it occurred to me that I just couldn't go on like this back to the studio painting as I did before this show. It was a major turning point in a way. I started thinking about some sculptures I did a long time ago in New York with plaster and found elements. And I started doing this here, and pretty soon I was completely caught up in it. I found a fabulous amount of freedom in it. It's a quick process. You have to work really fast with plaster, and then you can add, you can take away, you can incorporate lots of things. So you can do just about anything you want and see the results rather quickly, as I said. It was a way also to feel free of a definition of myself, because the show I mentioned gave me the feeling that I got caught into my own definition. In sculpture, I could jump from one thing to another. I could explore just about anything, from the antiquity to primitive arts to art brut to modernism. All sorts of possibilities that you know exist, but it's only when you really deal with them that you enjoy all the potential that it has. So it has been a real field of exploration for me. And since I couldn't really surprise myself with painting, I finally found with those sculptures a way to surprise myself just about daily. It has been a very passionate, extensive occupation for me for the last 2 years or so. I'm fascinated by human heads, especially in art, but also in life. In life, because basically when you see someone, you read the person through this person's face. It's an extraordinary field of signification. The amount of meaning you can convey through a facial expression is something absolutely endless in a way. And in art, what is interesting to me is that the face, of course, can be used to mean and signify all those things, but you also have the whole distance between a face that is an archetype type of face, its universality in a way, and a very specific individual face. And it's between those two extremes that I'm working, and they're so separated that's why the field is so interesting to explore.
I remember you saying you like to get your hands dirty.
Yes. You know, when I was very young, I started in Paris around 68, and then in New York in the early 70s. I was fascinated with all those abstract questions about art. What is art? What does it mean? The social dimension of art, the political dimension of art, all those very abstract questions that led to conceptual art. At the time, I completely stopped doing things precisely with my hands. I was working only with my head, writing a lot. And after some 4 or 5 years like that, I realized that all those questions were absolutely valid. Those are questions that I guess any artist has to ask. But at the same time, it was like splitting from one's real life and becoming totally intellectual, which is a big danger in art. And I decided to get back to painting just to touch things. My first paintings were splashed on canvas. I was dipping my hands in buckets of paint and throwing the paint on the canvas. All this because I was convinced that painting is essentially a physical activity, like eating, like making love, like taking a walk, like getting drunk, like anything you do with your life that shakes you a little bit, right? And it's in this sense that I meant it when I said that I need to keep my hands dirty. I've been interested in prints for a long time too, just like sculpture. But in New York I did mostly etchings. I did some works with lithography. And I always felt that those two media were somehow had too many connotations with the past. So I never felt really at ease with those two ways of making prints. And recently, during the past 2-3 years, having taken a little break with painting, I discovered all the possibilities offered by the new technologies, such as inkjet printing, things like that. And I also met someone who had a studio for silk screens. And that's how I got into it. I found it a very contemporary medium and giving a lot of flexibility, and it also allowed me to literally tear up some drawings and recompose things in ways that led back to Cubism, to Surrealism, and gave me a great freedom in a formal sense. That is, I was not limited by the sort of coherent image that had its own unity. I could break this unity and question the image in the making of a print. And that's how I did this series of prints.
In 1975, John Russell, senior critic at the New York Times, wrote that you were all over the place. How did you take that?
Well, I knew John Russell quite well, and so I knew he didn't mean it as a compliment. Since then, I had the time to think about it. And I realized that instinctively, I was always against this system in the art world that somehow requests that you would have a signature style, that if you're so-and-so, then everyone can recognize right away that the work is done by so-and-so, right? I rebelled against that. I thought that to be defined was like being dead. After I die, maybe people will find some unity in my work. That's not any of my concern. I'm much more interested in exploring things. The field is just too vast to be satisfied with just a thin slice of the pie. So I've been wandering all over, literally all over the place. Not only within painting, because I started with basically color field painting and went through Expressionist Picasso, then landed a little bit in so-called political painting, and went on and on, exploring different phases of realism, figuration, but never with the idea of letting myself be caught in a style. Of course, inevitably, you have some habits of working. If I step really way back, I can recognize my own paintings. I know nobody else would paint them the way I paint them. That's obvious. But not in the sense of having a sort of designed look at all. This is something I always fought against. So the logic of this brought me also into those slightly peripheral areas, which are sculpture and printmaking and even writing. I kept my interest in writing all throughout. I've been writing about my experiences in the New York art world, in Soho, and the glorious years. I've been writing poetry. I'm teaching also. I see it also as a part of my activity as an artist. To me, being a painter is more than being a specialist. I get quite annoyed when I see people sort of digging themselves into a hole and staying there. I want to run, I want to move, and I'm going to keep moving.